Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is the show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. We're about to do it. I hope all of you all are well and healthy out there. It's a beautiful spring, strange one, beautiful. And we're awful glad to have you with us today, whatever time of year you're listening to the show. We're talking about continuing a discussion about authenticity. In truth, and this is what I say every show, but in truth, every show I've ever done is about this. It's about drilling down, finding out who we really are under the pretenses that we put on top, under the acting that we do, under the show. Who are you really? I mean, we really are spiritual beings in physical form, not the other way around. Physical beings that think about spirituality once in a while. And I think it's very important that at some point in our life when we deem it necessary, usually when we really get our issues and see our patterns and realize we're not getting anywhere with those things and it's not working out, only then do we then say, something to be worked on here. I know in my own experience, I started out as an actor years ago, and I, as a young person, always knew my acting was what I said at the time was tight. That was my word. Oh, what it was I was self-conscious and fearful. And so, you go on a journey, and this is the journey, where you're taking all the fear experiences that are trapped in the emotional body. And as you work on yourself and release these things and resolve these things, the interesting thing is that ultimately, what happens? Hey, Lisa, I'm so glad you're with us this morning. For those of you on Blog Talk Radio, I'm actually responding to people that are writing to me on Facebook Live. What I was just saying is what are we actually doing? We're stopping the flow of energy of who we really are. We can't attract the journey that we want if we're always pretending something else. I think this is an important thing to talk about before we begin. Everything that I do is based on, because I found it incredibly valuable in my own life and developed techniques and things around this to help you. It's very important to know yourself. Now, we all think we know ourselves. We actually don't. We don't know what we don't know, right? Well, I think we would agree with that. We don't know what we don't know. We're not aware of what we're not aware of. That's life, okay? But it's also the opportunity for the esoteric journey. Why do I call it esoteric? Because it's hidden. It's hidden under our crap, And it's actually pretty easy to remove your crap. You don't have to relive anything. That's just drama on the individual's part that think they do. But you do have to be willing to face it and look at it and deal with it and resolve it and get on the other side of it. Now, this is what's so interesting to me. So we take all these moments in your life and we give you a larger perspective and we show you how to resolve things. And we ultimately get you to a place, we ultimately get you to this marvelous place where there's nothing else to know. You're going to try to still keep what you've been doing going because that's human nature. The interesting thing is, the thing, when you know it all, and you do know it all, with investigation, everybody thinks they know it all now. That's just narcissism, ego. Nobody knows anything, right? And it's what's so interesting is the more enlightened you are, the more you realize nobody knows anything and you're not knowing anything and you're comfortable with that. You're in the moment waiting for God to tell you. That's exciting. So what this then becomes is a real journey, a real opening. You begin to really see that you must work on yourself to know yourself. I have to ask you, and I want to ask you by way of teaching something, is what's stopping you from working on yourself? Or do you say that you're too old? If you are saying you're too old, that's just a fallacy, because nobody's ever too old. What do you think you're doing on your deathbed a long time from now, hopefully? You're working on yourself. What happens to your life if you work on yourself early? Life gets a whole lot better, a whole lot easier, and a whole lot earlier. You see? Okay. Are you stopping yourself because you don't have enough money to work on yourself? Well, I would say you have a misguided way of looking at that. We're actually supposed to make you money here by getting you out of your own way, by showing you what an incredible resource you are, by showing your talents and gifts and abilities, and how to add them to the world beautifully. Most of us have been business coaches. I know I was. I am. I'm just not in this moment. And maybe I am in this moment as we're talking about this, who knows. But you are the only resource you've got. You. We're so busy running around and trying to do for others or have others think better about us or whatever, instead of finding out who we really are and what we really do well, you see? So you're the only resource. You're the investment, number one. Number two, one of the things I have always noticed, and I want you to hear me about this, is when you say, oh, that's way too expensive for me, it never occurs to you, possibly, that you get more than your money's worth. And you know why? Because you spend your life shortchanging yourself in a million ways. So it never occurs to you you can get more for an investment. Isn't that something? Now, if that's the mentality that you have, I want to put on the table, that's why you need money all the time. So we've got to loosen those purse strings up a little bit. You've got to realize you've got to invest in yourself to get somewhere. Now, you don't have to work with me. You can work with a myriad of other people that are out there that appeal to you. Find your teacher. But not to work on yourself, it's not going to help you. It's marvelous to listen to these radio shows. It's marvelous to read the books that I and other people put out there. I'm so glad that you're doing so. It does help. But does it essentially change you? No, because you're not at the bottom line of why you formed that issue in the first place. All of these things, our books, our radio shows, and the things that we do are for the general public until we have you in front of us in a session. Hello, Ben. Nice to see you today. So it's very important that you become cognizant of what you're doing here and realize that there's work to be done. I hope you will do it. Now, we started how to be authentic, what it takes to be authentic last week. We've really been talking about this for several weeks, but last week we started what I think about this subject, okay? And I think it's extremely important to talk to you from my point of view. First of all, I'm the poster child for change. I did it myself. I continue to do it. I think that God is in every situation. There's a gift here all the time, but we're blind. We're not seeing it. I think I've written in my first book, The Life You Want, that enlightenment is not the life that most of us lead. It's the life that most of us miss. We're not looking. We're not on. We're not aware. We're just going through our day. We're doing what we think we need to do, what we suppose we should do, or what we just plain old should do. Instead of asking yourself some very fundamental questions, which is, who are you? Who are you? What are your talents and gifts and abilities? What are your interests? What are the learnings from your life experience that you have? And let's mix all of those up and more. And let's find out what you do really well based on. Not the job that's available, but who you really are. Who are you? And then what's your divine purpose in that? Now, this is a deceptive sentence that I just gave you there. Because your divine purpose a lot of times just doesn't show up automatically. We have young people calling the show and saying, is this my divine purpose? And it's like, you're going to be doing this for a while before you find that. Because it's an evolvement. I know in my own life that I was an actor, a child actor. I taught acting, first to children. Then I taught acting to adults. I continued to act in theater and in film. I had a series when I was, I want to say, in my late teens, early 20s, of very dramatic experiences. Very dramatic, intuitive experiences that I didn't understand at the time. They almost frightened me because I didn't understand them. I mean, I can tell you about them if you want to know, but really, they were big things for me. And I thought, what in the world is going on? I realize now that Spirit was showing me some talents and gifts and abilities that I didn't know I had, which many times you hear on this show. And later on, when I really woke up and I saw what it was and I became more and more conscious, they deepened in talents and gifts and abilities. And all of a sudden, I didn't have to have these really dramatic experiences. They became a way of life. Important. Because what's going to happen in you is talents and gifts and abilities are about to open in you. Wow. You will not believe what comes up from you. And they're all part of the reinvention of self. We should be reinventing ourselves all the time. You know, society came out of this industrial age where everybody worked at the company and the company was supposed to take care of us. Church was supposed to take care of us. Everything was supposed to take care of us, by the way. And because we were kind of children in our head, we didn't really know that we create our lives. We're the ones that do it. Oh, there were great books that came along, you know. Carnegie, I think, wrote one, didn't he? And Andrew Carnegie, and you know, the Power of Your Subconscious Mind came along, and a lot of these things came along that tried to tell you this is how the mind works. And we started waking up. We're now thoroughly in the process of waking up. There are various degrees of waking up. I mean, I do a very specific and very deep, very psychological energy work when I work with individuals. Okay? And once in a while, somebody will come along at a cocktail party or something, and they'll say to me, oh, I know all about what you do. I work on myself all the time. I've been working on myself for 40 years. And I'll say, great, what do you do? And they'll say, I go to a psychic once a month. I've been going to her for the last 40 years. Now, I don't have any problems with those things that you all are doing. I really don't. But my job, if you want to know specifically what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to turn you on to who you are. All those answers are supposed to be inside you. There's nothing that anybody really can tell you that's from the outside, like somebody like that. That God is speaking directly to you. I think I mentioned toward the end of last week's lecture that I always feel as if at some point in my progress, I took the phone off the hook and left the line open for God to speak to me. It changed my life. Now, not just that. I mean, I had to have more of a global attitude. I had to get over all my issues. And let me tell you, I had all of yours and then some, just the way it is. I think it was Janine Garofalo, that comic, who said that somebody had more issues than the New York Times. There we are. We all have more issues than the New York Times. I am certainly not the exception to that. But you clear and you clear and you clear and you clear and you look at yourself and you understand context. You understand how that moment happened in a context. First of all, you validate where you are, then you see it in a context. It's resolved, and then we move on to other issues that are deeper and stronger and more core. All right. And then all of a sudden you do that for a length of time, and there, as I said before, there's nothing else to find, and you realize that the most powerful thing you can do is put your story down. What's an example of a story? I am just a little dependent girl who's an artist and can't make a living for herself. That's a good story. Okay? How about I'm just a little Ohio farm girl that is too skinny and dumb for anybody to take seriously? How about that? That's a good story. You have a story too, whether you're conscious of it or not. And this dictates oftentimes the energy that we come from and what we do to create our lives, you see? And I say with all my heart, you need to get to the place where you can drop your story. It's too early now. You haven't resolved some things inside of you. And here is the crazy esoteric journey. I say resolve, 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 resolve. Let's work on this. Let's work on this. Let's find out all of these things. Let's resolve them, put them in a broader context, and really understand who people are and what they've done to you and all that. And let's honor your feelings, and let's put them all in place. And now let's forget everything. Isn't that the esoteric journey? It is. I told a story last week, for those of you that are just listening in that didn't hear last week. My background is theater and film. And there's an old story about an acting teacher who swept into the room very dramatically. He was full of pretense back in the 40s and 50s. Swept into her class and sat on a stool dressed in black, right? And said for 1/2 hour, very dramatically in all sorts of things, ways, she said, prepare, 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 prepare. You can get the point, right? And then at the 1/2 hour mark, I'm sure there was a clock in the class somewhere, she said, forget, 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 forget. I've always laughed about that story. First of all, at the pretension of it, I do think it's funny. But there is a truth to it, too, and that's why I've remembered it all these years. That's what we do spiritually. That's this journey. You are preparing to forget. If I had been an acting student in her class back in the 50s or 60s or whenever I was young, I will tell you right now, I would have been pissed as hell because I wouldn't have understood that. Only now, when you reach a certain point in your own experience, your own life, do you say, oh, I get it. I get it. I get it. I forgot to sit on that pillow to get me up higher. You prepare to forget. Now, do you really forget? You don't. But here's the acting thing, and then let's translate that into real life. In acting, you forget what you have, all your preparation, so you can be natural. There's a story about Helen Hayes, who was known as, I think, the queen of New York theater at one time. She was a very good actor. And there's a story about her when they were not doing anything. She was on the set, here she is on the set, and she's just picking up a teacup that is on a side table over and over and over and over and over and over again. over and over and over. The story goes, if I am telling it correctly, a stagehand walks by and says, Miss Hayes, going to ask you a question. Why are you doing that? And she said, so it'll look natural. Now let's take that into real life. When you work on yourself, when you really delve down deep and know your patterns, and by the way, you cannot do this alone. Your ego child's mind does not want you to have certain information. The ego child's mind says that you are alive because it made it so, because it taught you your limits. But how are you going to be your potential and limitless if you are working under your limits? You know, hiding your light under a bushel. Isn't that the way the story goes in the Bible? Okay. Your talents, I think it said. That's good too. So we translate Helen Hayes' story, you know, to make it look natural by saying you work and you work and you work and you work and you reveal your patterns and you reveal honestly your bull that you're telling yourself, your self-deception, the thing that you are, knowing all the while, and we're strengthening it all the while, that you are a good person. You see? One of the reasons that we take on our father's depression when we're little kids is we've tried everything else, and we think as little kids that if I take that on for him, then he'll be relieved and I'll survive. It's a very loving act and a very selfish one at the same time. What's the surprise in that? And we survive. You see, back then, before we're 8 years old, and then a secondary patterning until we're 11 or 12 years old, we're just trying to survive. Our ego comes along at 18 months to make sense of our world. Because if we can't make sense of our world, we're not going to be here. We're not going to live through our childhoods. So we have to make sense of our world. We make sense of our world by taking things that are rather untenable and we normalize them. Then we generalize them. If our mothers are mean, all women are mean. If our mothers are mean or critical, all people have the potential of being very critical to us. You see, that's a normalization. All right? I mean, a generalization. Normalizing is when you accept it as normal. Generalizing is when you say, a mass of people feel this way, okay? They, the great they, won't like me or whatever. You understand that? And then the third thing we do to make all this seem okay, when it's not at all okay, is that we, how do I want to put this? We escalate this to something that God wants us to do. This is a holy mission to carry our father's depression. You see? Well, it's not a holy mission. It's an issue. We did it for various reasons. I'm being very general about you in front of me, if that is anything like you. And so we do these things when, and we have all these devices to hold them in place. Anybody ever heard of OCD? Or anybody ever heard of any of the issues that we talk about in psychology and psychiatry? You see? All of these things are defenses, aids to hold a real fragile, shaky fabric in place. Why is it shaky? Because it's not who you are. It's not who you really are. It's just not. Now, we can close down, we can live by rote, we can do the same things over and over again. We can never think new thoughts, have new feelings, do different things, or do them rarely. And we never consider the spiritual experience, the energetic experience at all. That's a life many people live out there. But I'll tell you what really is a wonderful key. When you start working on yourself, you see that everything is energy. Everything is energy. Nothing's really personal. Nothing's really personal. We're taking it personally because we don't have the larger experience, the larger mind on what's large. The mind that is certainly closer to the pure loving energy. Now, is the ego child's mind bad? No, that's God too. It's just the absence of God in many cases, because the ego child's mind believes in lack, right? So you, God, as the absence of God or the fullness of God. Now here's the key phrase: according to your understanding. Many times when we're working on this, we catch ourselves saying, "Oh no, I believe in God. God is so wonderful. God," and I look at that very carefully when you're in the earlier days and even in the intermediate days when you're working with me, because you know what? God can be a fantasy too. This work can be a fantasy too, working on yourself. By the way, it's as big a fantasy as that this world is full of lack and that you are lacking in some way. That's fantasy too. So this work is reality-based. We've got to get you out of these ideas of yourself, of God, of the world, other people, of everything, of money, and bring you to reality where you are well, where it's all energy, and you're either using the energy. You know, when somebody comes to me with money problems, I'm always, one of the first things I always look at, if that's a priority to them, is how they're using not their money, but their energy. Because money is energy. You see, love is energy. Everything's energy. So if you have money problems, you better be looking at how you're wasting your energy in a million ways. And I mean, you'll be wasting it in a million ways. How aware do you think you need to be to catch those things? Psychology tells us that, and a lot of research that's been done on this, and you can read about it in the book. I do encourage you all to get that. It's a hard book to get through. It's a very powerful book. It really is. People can think up to 1,000 thoughts an hour. You can think, you're capable of thinking up to 1,000 thoughts an hour. Now, all those thoughts are energy, and they go into a very abundant pile where you know God's right there, and abundance is wonderful, and you know you've asked for it, and whatever it is, and by God, it's going to come. You know it. Everything's calm, and there's peace about it all. And then you got another pile over here that's usually bigger. And that pile is very lack oriented, right? It's the absence of God pile. Fullness of God pile, absence of God pile. Now, where are your thoughts, your 1,000 thoughts in an hour going? Because this is cumulative. Your thoughts are going to create your life. You see, you can't hide from it. What you've got is what you have created energetically, because it's all energy. Now, that's not a fuss. That's to say, let's get going here, because you better know what most of those thoughts are and what pile they're going on. And you can say, the ego child's mind will always say to me and everybody, oh, it's so hard, I can't do it. It's just so hard, I can't stop negative thinking. I can't stop doing it. I can't stop mind reading other people. I can't, oh, look at all the cognitive distortions. We've already done a lot of radio shows on those, right? And what I'm going to say to you about that is we just have more to do, more to release in the ego child's mind. Here's the way energy works. It's just fascinating to me. You have 4 bodies: the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual. These are the bodies we work with in our methodology, okay? The spiritual body is the energetic body. By the way, all the bodies are the energetic, and this is why at the moment of your physical death, you live on, because you have always been the energetic body. But all these other bodies give their energy now to the wholeness of you, which is the full energy package. And The physical body dies, but the spiritual body goes on. People call that the soul. You know what I'm talking about. That said, when we are born and we live our lives as children, no matter how great our parenting is, we have misconceptions about ourselves. The dad, because everything is ego-centered as a kid. Everything is relative to us. There is no them. There is just us relative to them. Therefore, when our father works too hard and doesn't have enough time for us, we're not that important. We're not that interesting. We have not done something great for him to approve of. You see? See how it works? Even before we are of ego age, which is, as I said, the ego develops around 18 months old. Even before that time, let's say your mother's father dies and you don't get fed on time. A child before 18 months old realizes all time is now. All time is now. So that moment where you don't get fed and you become hungry and you don't get fed 2 hours later becomes a really scary moment because you'll never be fed and your life is in jeopardy. The hard thing about this to realize with normal people who are rational people is this is irrational. These things don't match rational criteria. They're down there deeply in your cells. It's the way you are. So no one, no matter how great the upbringing was, escapes issues. If you escaped your issues, you would have no trajectory of growth. You would have no divine quest. You would not be able to go from the fear-based self to the love-based self. It wouldn't be possible. And all of those issues that you so vilify, many people do, that are in the child's mind are the energy of what you are about to become when you resolve issues and you become the higher mind. You all remember that exercise. It's a very good one. I taught it again this week, which is what I call the threshold exercise. Draw a line, a horizontal line across the page. Draw a vertical line through the horizontal line. You're going to have myriads of vertical lines. What you don't like about yourself or what you are doing or what's not particularly emotionally healthy, you put at the bottom of that line. Let's say selfishness. Okay, we're all selfish, by the way. Everybody is. Everybody is until they're not, right? So you work on yourself, you work on yourself, you work on yourself, and that line starts coming up. Your awareness starts coming up. What is that? That's your vibration that starts coming up. You cross that horizontal line. You go into the arena of your potential, of your excellence. Do you know that that very energy this turns into your altruism, turns into a great deal of caring about yourself and others? If you didn't have the selfishness as a child, it could never be something else. Everything in life is like that. It all starts in the ego child's mind and it goes into something else. The whole purpose of our work and other people's work right now, and consciousness work itself, is to take all of those things, to look at everything below that line that's in the ego child's mind and help you raise your consciousness and resolve those things and get up and up and up and up and up until you cross the line, at which time I'm going to tell you right now, and this may be one of the reasons you don't want to start the work, is because you'll never stop, because life gets so much better. You absolutely know that God's right there with you every moment. You see the gifts everywhere, even if it's something that hurts. You know everything has a reason, even if you don't understand it. That one day, if you ask the question and say, I'd like to understand this, you will. Isn't that something? let me make a note for just a minute about something, because I'd like to take you off the track. And I want to come back to this idea, okay? Is it fun to watch me write? Okay, now, I've got the note down. I want to go off the track a minute and say that when I say that you will know, I am not one of those people that say, live a miserable life, die, go to heaven, and know everything. No, I actually, I do believe that that we lose our physical form, and that life goes on, and that love goes on. That's what I believe goes on, and it is all God. So I don't believe in waiting for anything. I think heaven can be right here in the peace and the knowledge of God, and the fact that you create your life, and that you are a creating and creative machine. Okay? But more than that, whatever you are is who you are. And it's here with talents and gifts and abilities that most of us have never explored. Why? Because the ego child's mind limits us. I'm going to give you an example of that. I seem to be talking a lot about theater and film today, so here I go again. I remember being a child in the theater. I think I was probably around 7 years old. 7 or 8. I was in the wings, ready to go on and do nothing, really. You know, I was set dressing as a child. I remember an actor standing behind me, and I remember that this was some sort of comedy, and a man came off the stage, or at least it had some funny lines in it. A man came off the stage and said to the woman behind me, because as a child I was nothing, right? Said to the woman behind me, "Wow, dull audience tonight." That's what he said, dull audience tonight. As a child, standing there, I had a momentary flash. It wasn't the audience. It was something we were doing. We, as actors, were doing. Wow, really? So right then and there, without a knowledge of any of this, all right, of God, of where I was going in life, I was just a kid. But I remember saying, why? What are we doing? But we're doing it. I know we're doing it. I just don't know what we're doing. Well, I'll tell you what we were doing. I'll tell you right now. It's the difference. You know, we go back to the threshold exercise, okay? It's the difference in why people act and the energy they do it in. If you are above that line, you're acting out of generosity, of communicating, of sharing, of helping, of feeling something and sharing that, right? Sharing knowledge and gifts and abilities that we have, sharing the knowledge of the author and the author's intent, and so much more. It's a very spiritual experience. But if we're below that line, we want attention. We want to be thought of as great. And this is controlled by not only emotion, but an energy level. You have to have a really good energy level to have your body be 100% on, entirely present, and to work from your potential. If you want to know more about that, I've got some DVDs out. I don't mean to be selling everything today, but here I go. And I do think it would help, or I wouldn't even mention it. But I've got some DVDs out called the It series. Guys, they talk all about this, how to do it, gives you exercises, how you can be a presence in any situation, all right? And be real, be authentic. It's a really good CD. All right. Very heavy on energy and acting exercises to get you there. Hi, Pat. Oh, I'm big red now. Oh, great. Well, thank you. Yes, exactly. He says he likes my necklace. Just don't trip over it later. Well, it's good to hear from you too, my darling. And you take good care of yourself as well. I love you dearly, Pat. Pat's an old friend of mine. Okay, so going back to this, so I asked that question at 7 or 8 years old, standing in the darkened wing of the theater, waiting to go on. Fraction of a second, crossed my mind, gone. And then I just lived my life with no particular direction. I mean, obviously I was an actor, and I took acting classes, and I taught acting, and I went into film, and I made my transition from teaching kids to adults, and directed a lot of shows. And I just lived my life. And one day, out of my mouth, as I was teaching, came the information that the energy level had changed and the intention had changed from the highest self to the ego child's mind, and that's why it was a dull audience, because we weren't doing our job. The audience felt pulled upon. The audience felt these insecure actors. I as much as I have been in the theater and enjoy film and everything, boy, I don't like bad stuff, because you can feel it when the actor is working from a place where they're needy. Don't give me that. I don't want to see it. That's not entertainment. That's a session. How's that? Okay. Which I do enjoy, by the way. My point in telling you that story is this. If you ask the questions, you are going to receive the answers. But you have to be in the place to receive the answers. I didn't receive that answer until many years later. 12 years later, maybe more. I didn't receive the answer until I had worked on myself enough to understand it and to get it. I had to reach a level that I understood energy more and saw things as energy more. Not entirely at that time in my life. I think that all of you, that have any kind of trouble with people, and I'm not saying that's all of you, I'm saying that's some of all of you, are taking things way too personally instead of realizing this is an energetic thing, there to teach us something, there to show us something, there to get us to speak up and say, I didn't quite understand this remark and where you were coming from when you made it. Could you tell me? All higher self ways of doing things rather than the ego child's mind, right, that we come out with. Either we come out with, or we pull in and we become suppressed. We suppress what we really want to, one way or another. It comes out, guys. So we might as well resolve these things. Life is an illusion. We really are. Shakespeare had it right. Often writers that are tuning in to the beyond. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players is right. We're all here taking a part, acting out our soul purpose and what we need to learn here, and fitting in with everybody else's as well. And they're learning from us and we're learning from them, and it's all one big play. But what do we do with it? We take it personally. We go, oh, why is life so hard? Right? Drama, drama, drama. Without ever being on the stage, by the way. It's one of our defenses to keep us from going down there deeply and looking at what the problem is. We're all in our ego child's mind terrified of transitioning to see what really the problem is. Why is that? I think that we hold on to the familiar because we've learned as a kid, we have learned, every single person working the planet has learned that change is bad, that change is scary, that change could be bringing you something bad. But if the world is as promised that everything works for our good, and everything does work for our good, when we are in the energy of it working for our good, that's what we need. When the Bible says everything works for our good, for those that love the Lord. What do you think that means? Don't take it literally, guys. It means that are people that are in the energy of openness and knowing that everything is going to be fine and creating the life they want and being loving and being creative. Everything works for your good, but you got to be in that energy. You know, God doesn't come down and match your ego and your fantasy. That's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I hate to tell you, kids. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Now, you can keep that up and prolong the inevitable, which is your waking up and having a marvelous life and full of potential, or you can do it on the day you die. But why put it off that long? Come on. This is not a process. This self-growth stuff is not a process that will sink you. Actually, it'll give you a life, the one you want. You're already living the one you want. Maybe you should want more. It goes back to shortchanging yourself, right? So, moving along now, saying that the information, now, my point of telling you that theater story is not just, this is the way energy works. That was one of the levels. But the big thing, the big lesson here is every question is going to be answered. But you have to be open to it. You have to get yourself ready. You have to get yourself in a place to receive an answer. You know that this works in not just in the emotional realm too. I mean, I think of Thomas Edison and the telephone. All right, 5 other people invented the telephone, or 6 or 7. I don't remember them, but that's true. A lot of people invented the telephone at the same time Thomas Edison did. Why? First of all, they were all ready to receive the information. They got themselves there. They learned what they did to get themselves there. Secondly, the world was ready to receive the information, or it could have just been a project on Thomas Edison's and all these other people's desk and never seen the light of day. So if you think that you want to change your life without work, ain't gonna happen. You gotta prepare. I did wear black. I guess say that. Prepare. I will not do that. All right. You gotta prepare before it can come to fruition. It's just the way it is. We don't get to go through life being stuck. We can be stuck, and we can go through life being stuck, and we can be miserable. But why do you think that every human being on the planet seeks happiness unless something is screwy in our lives and with our issues? It's natural. It's God, isn't it? Happiness is built in, too. People are looking for it on the outside when it's here. I mean, if your life contained an absolute knowingness that God is with you every second, and that phone is off the hook, and if you need to know anything, you'll hear it, and if you, it'll come through you in some way, and if you don't need to know anything, proceed as usual, okay? And if you know in that energy that every single thing, even if you don't feel good, is perfect, I think that's a pretty happy life. This is the peace that passes all understanding, that phrase. This is it, where you just know. Now, what else was I going to say? All right, I'm so glad I made a note. God knows where I would be. All right. So you've got 4 bodies: the mental, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual or energetic body. All of them are energetic, but this is the one that really matters for us right now. There are distortions in all 4 bodies, always, in every life. And we've got to figure them out, find them and figure them out. Now, in our methodology, Spirit tells us which body to go to, first, second, third, because we think of it, and much spiritual consciousness is drawn as a gyre, one thing under another, one thing under another. You understand? Okay. So we might start out in the spiritual body, and the spiritual body tells us that there's a distortion because you've got mixed energy with the mother in an aspect that we're about to go to. Then it'll take us to the emotional body. Then it might take us to the physical body. It might then take us to the emotional body 4 times, back to the spiritual body to make an adjustment energetically. What is all that for? Now, that's our methodology. I don't know anybody else's methodology, but ours. That's ours. That's the one I teach. That's the one, if you're going to take classes from me, you will learn. And here's the importance of it. Most people have way too much energy in the emotional body. Why do you think you're an emotional being with a little bit of spirituality thrown in on Sunday mornings? It's all energy. It's because the preponderance of energy is in the emotional body unresolved, and it stays there. Psychology call it fixations. They never tell you what's fixated. What is fixated? Your energy around certain moments in your life, and moments you don't even know about. That's why we have to do some work on you so that you'll know what you don't know, right? Oh, I'm not telling you about your life that you don't know. I'm telling you about your emotions that you've never accessed concerning those things. Hi, Kat. Good morning. I'm so glad all of you all are with us this morning. That just thrills me more than you know. It really does. I'm so glad. We have such a lovely community, don't we? So, that said, once we start working energetically on you, once you are, we are removing these issues, resolving them, quieting your nervous system over and over and over and over again about certain things, finding the fixations, finding these old defenses that you have, finding these old beliefs that you inherited from your mother and father that you don't even feel, okay? I mean, you feel, but you don't even, that aren't really even yours, that you're carrying. Then, and only then, we start lightening the emotional body. Lightening the emotional body. What happens? Well, if we're lightening the emotional body, and all this was energy, where's the energy going? Any idea? To the spiritual body. Work on these issues, and what happens is the energy gets transferred to the spiritual body, and you wake up. This is the awakening that we talk about. This is deeper consciousness. This is enlightenment if you go far enough. That's the spiritual body. You take these things that are trapped in the emotional body. What should belong in the emotional body? All of the system of God. It's an incredible system. Forgiveness of yourself and all others. Compassion. Joy. Creativity. Yes, part of that is there. An openness, ready to explore and discover. Unconditional love is there. I thank you, Lisa. She says, Amen. Good. One of the things I want to say to you, one of my pet peeves, you've heard a lot of them the last 2 sessions. I'm so sorry. Here I am saying, I just dislike this. All right. One of them is how society bats around unconditional love all the time. Guys, in my playbook, there is nothing that is unconditional love that we're living if we have an ounce of ego child's mind still left. And even then, unconditional love is what happens when we have really... So don't everybody aspire to unconditional love. Just aspire to working on yourself. That's what's on your plate right now, right? That's what's on your plate. Unconditional love. I mean, unconditional love is out there for you, as is absolute altruism without it being adulterated with wanting something from people. It's something that's going to happen. It's going to be something you open to. By the way, none of these things that are the beneficences of God are earned by being a good little boy and girl. No, old religions have sold you a bill of goods on that one. Because these things are not earned. They're opened to. You open deeper levels of experience, of self, of God, of who you really are, of authenticity. And it's there, along with all sorts of hidden talents and gifts and ability. So I use this analogy, and I've used it before, but I think of the work we do as simple as weeding your garden. You have a garden. If you want your beautiful things to grow in it, the things that will nourish you, whether it will nourish your sense of beauty as in flowers, or nourish your body as in vegetables or fruits that you cultivate. My dears, those things cannot grow. They'll have the nutrients stolen from the soil. And your garden will not be its potential if you let all the weeds grow and let it go wild. You have to do some work. You have to get in there and pull up what you don't want to have in there. Now that sounds very violent. Pull it up. We're actually not pulling it up. We're resolving it. It's always going to be part of your wisdom. But it won't be the kid with those issues who drives the bus anymore. Your highest self will. You see? I'm using a lot of mixed metaphors today. I hope I'm not confusing you. So we have to go in there and resolve these things. They don't go away. They get assimilated. Why not, for example, forgive yourself? Let's go back to the first thing, and the kid that doesn't think much of himself because of his father. His father has worked, was a workaholic, never gave the kid any attention really. So the kid either implodes and thinks he's not good enough, or he overworks trying to still win his father's approval, even though his father's been dead for 45 years. Let's go back to him for a moment. Let's see that in a larger context. What was the father afraid of? What was the father's misguided ideas about life and himself and work and taking care of a family? What was his relationship with the mother? Because oftentimes when a mother is difficult, or by the way, when a father is difficult, the other partner goes to work because they can't deal with it. Well, who's the sacrificial lamb? The kids. The kids are, because they stay there with the crazy person. You've got to look at all of this relative to what you're doing now. You've got to see it. You've got to be mad at the fact because you didn't have a dad. He was off at work and didn't care, it seemed. But you'll come to the conclusion that he cared as much as he could because everybody's doing the best they can. Even if he was a crappy father. And in that, you see the misguiding thing, you forgive that. You forgive that you've been mistreating yourself all this time based on an appearance. You see, a child can't think through these things. A child does not even have a developed brain until they're in their 20s. And then in their 20s, it's rare when you find somebody that wants to work on themselves because in their 20s, they got other problems. They're trying to make it in the world. They don't know who they are yet. And some people are so fixated on that they never find out who they are. They get caught in a loop. Here's the hamster wheel. Right? But there's so much more to life. Guys, there's so much more to life. And there's so much more to you. There's no excuse, really, for anybody to say, I don't have time to work on myself. I'm too busy making an impression. All that's outside stuff. It's not going to make you really happy. What makes you happy? Using you, knowing you, sharing your wisdom, sharing who you are, creating value for yourself and others. It's, we go back to that old thing that I've said before about pleasure and gratification. Oh, it's very pleasurable when your boss says you did a good job on this project. It's wonderful, it makes you feel good. But if that project really didn't use all of you, if that didn't challenge you, if that didn't cause you to look at yourself and ask yourself deeper questions, you are not gratified. And therefore, the moment of pleasure doesn't mean much. It's like a pretty sunset. I always go back to that analogy. Oh, I love pretty sunsets and pretty sunrises, and the way the clouds scud across the sky on certain days, and the light and dark of the shadows. Oh, I love all that. Forget it as soon as I'm inside. Because it was pleasure, not gratification. But if I, as I am doing right now, edit and struggle with words and work on my book and pull every ounce of blood and guts out of me and put it on the page, even if I'm suffering, there's nothing I would rather do. That was always a criteria when I looked at actors. I knew I was going to have a great actor when they really could bring up the truth and the blood and guts and the experience of self as that character, right? Because every character is part of us, but we pick and choose elements and bring that forth as the character. If they could do that and suffer and really say they wouldn't do anything else and be totally present in that moment, I knew that they'd get somewhere. That's a good actor. That's gratification, by the way. Instead. Now, every life has to have both, right? It does. We all need gratification and pleasure. But if you want to really be happy, you're going to give some attention to gratification, maybe more attention than you do pleasure. Okay. Now, and by the way, that comes out of who you really are, of course. Last week, our last point was be willing to see and experience things you've never seen and experienced before. It's the difference between the closed mind and the open mind. The closed system doesn't interact much with its environment, therefore not much can happen to it. So if you are isolating and withdrawing, now look, I'm an introvert. Would you know that I'm an introvert? I am an introvert. Introvert is just somebody who takes energy from being alone. So I make sure I have a lot of alone time. Nothing wrong with that. Extrovert gets energy from people. But guys, if you think you can actually be one or the other in this world and be left alone, ain't so. You have to do both. If you're an extrovert, you also need to introspect. If you're an introvert, you need to get out there sometime. Okay? So, we've got to see and experience things we've never seen and experienced before. In other words, there needs to be an open system. Open system interacts a lot with the environment. That doesn't mean you're buffeted around like a leaf in the wind. Because if you have a strong sense of self, which I think we've talked about, you must have a strong sense of self. You are not buffeted at all. You receive information, say, I'll consider that. No, that's not to be considered. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Okay. And you start assimilating things that, by the way, become, I've got the hiccups all of a sudden, uniquely yours. You see, I've been in many of the classes that other people have. They've been in mine. I've read certain things. I had the parents I did. I formulated my life the way I did. I had certain experiences intuitively, as well as academically, as well as a lot of other things. Do I remember all that? No. But what you're getting right now is how I put it all together. That's happening in you too. That has happened in you too. What you're not doing necessarily is taking full advantage of that. And certainly, I want to get you to the place where you have the courage to do so. Another story. Oh my God. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm trotting down memory lane with my stories. This is something I've told in other contexts too. So there was, as a coach, I'm good friends with a lot of casting agents. So one of them called me and said, I have this great guy. He's adorable. He is the perfect little old man. I cannot cast him. I don't know what's wrong, but I just can't cast him, and I want to. I really need him. By the time you get to be, by the way, this guy was 92 years old. By the time you get to be 92 years old, you don't have a lot of competition out there in the world in film. So she really did want him to succeed, right? I think everybody wants everybody to succeed because, and in terms of casting, man, if you walk in and you be what I need, and that I'm casting right now, I don't have to work so hard the rest of the time, right? You're it. We don't realize how much that people are for us. We always think people are against us. It's because you're only looking from the child's point of view instead of the larger point of view, right? All right. Now, so, he walked in. His name was John. I remember him so well. I'm sure this has been 20 years ago. I'm sure poor old John has left the planet, but he was, such a sweet man. He had been a teacher, and now he was acting. And so I gave him something to read, and he read it, and he read it back to me, and his energy was so small. His read was great, but his energy was very small. He was not putting forth any energy. And I said, and by the way, your visibility has everything to do with your energy level. Okay? Your energy has everything to do with everything. So I explain the energy. I'm not going to explain it here, but if you want to hear more about it, a series that is a DVD set, is your ticket. I think it's really important to listen to. Really, I do. So I said, and you can buy it on the website, I believe. And it's very inexpensive, as all my things are. I want you all to have them in your hand and take them seriously. So that's why I charge what I do. Okay, so I explained the energy system to him. I said, John, will you walk and swing your arms and let's get your physical energy level up and let's translate that to a really good read and a good performance. And he said, I think I can do it without walking. And I said, well, I've never seen anybody do some sort of physical exercise. And he said, but I think I can do that. I thought, well, I was cockier back then. So I didn't say that out loud, but I was thinking, right? And he put his head down, and in a minute, he came up and he gave the perfect read. Energy level, great, powerful, visible, terrific. I said, John, I've never seen anybody do that. I always have to work them and get them, I'm going to tell you right now, past their issues about being visible into this level of their potential, and you just did it. And he looked at me and he smiled. And in his really dear, humble way, he said, well, I'm 92 years old. What do I have to be afraid of? Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're not 92 to learn that lesson. Everything that I have for you in my arsenal of books and CDs and DVDs and everything. And this whole show and every show is to that end. Come out of the fear. And the earlier you can come out of the fear and live in that grace-filled place that is only achieved when we go past the absence of God thinking and root all that stuff out. And can we root it out? You betcha it can be rooted out. Your mind changed. Takes a while. Get going. Then you'll be like John in that. What do you have to be afraid of? Really, what do you have to be afraid of? Everything that you can name to be afraid of is in the ego child's mind. Because if God is in this moment and every moment, and you are protected and cared for, and you are protected even in illness, and everything is one big old continuation of life, and there is no death, and there is no drama of any of that. There's just a good life to be lived until you don't on this planet in physical. What do you have to be afraid of? Nothing. And everything you come up with is a part of the kid's fear-based lexicon of terms. All right. I want to go back to my list because do you know what? I haven't talked about one thing on it yet. Oh, and I got 18 minutes left. What is the matter with me? Anyway, here we go. I just wanted to stroll down memory lane with you and give you all those theater examples and film examples. Okay, so I mentioned this, but honestly, I need to just tell you more about it. What's going to happen when you reach these deeper levels of experience of self? You are authentic. You're going to find you've got a lot of talents, gifts, and abilities and wisdom you had no idea about. I've seen it every single time. When I'm working on someone's awareness in their private session and I really open that, they come in with a whole new session the next week. They come in with all these insights. They've done my work for me. I mean, it really is amazing. We turn that on in you. I want you to know that you're supposed to be turned on to that. You can't be closed to that. This is your life. You have to be willing to change the things that aren't working for you anymore. That's pretty scary stuff. Sometimes it entails quite a lot, doesn't it? But you do have to have that willingness. So sometimes we have to work on your courage, work on your willingness, work on your not just wanting to keep control of everything. Control's got to go. Are you one of those people that get very unhappy if something doesn't go your way? You might want to look at your control issues. And it's not that you have to get them to do what you want. It's that the control issue has to go. And that's all the energy is telling you. Control has to go. Control, wanting nothing to change, wanting nobody to find out about you. You see, the imposter syndrome that we talked about several classes ago, I think when we started the series, as a matter of fact, is what you do instead of being who you are. You remember those lessons? The imposter syndrome, I'm not sure I can remember all 5 of them. There are 5 subtypes. One was, what was that for? The perfectionist. One was Superman. One was the natural genius, thinking you ought to know it all yourself. One was the soloist. I can do better than anybody else. I don't need anybody else. It takes too long to train them. And the last one was the expert. If you're falling into doing those things instead of just talking to people and being yourself and finding the best way to work and everything, you're trying to control things. Control isn't going to get you what you want. Because it's, when you're controlling, you're trying to close the system. So by God, you can you'll know what to do. All right. And I say, open the system and find out that you do already know what to do as the adult, because the closed system is just working from one premise, which is, I'm a kid and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle people. I don't know how to handle conflict. I don't know how to do this. It's the lack of God again, right? Instead of the fullness. So throw all that out, and we've got to get you to the point where you're going to be open to seeing new ways of doing things, learning new ways of doing things. Let's talk about different things. I think of one story about this. I had a client a number of years ago who was unusual. She was a woman, and she was in logistics. 30, 40 years ago, I can't remember when this was, but it seems like it was at least 30 years ago. She was one of those rare birds, because there are not a lot of women in this business of logistics. So she worked with organizing, say, getting groceries to Kroger or Harris Teeter, or whoever your grocery stores are. She was in charge of these big, massive shipments from place to place. And so she, at one point, partnered with people she didn't know very well. They talked a real good game, and if they partnered up, she could get a humongous client. Well, of course, she leapt on that. She did what she was supposed to, and they dropped the ball completely. It was a complete disaster. A complete disaster. She was so ashamed. What was she ashamed of? Well, she had not watched the other side. She expected them to be as good as she was. She didn't know anything about these people. She didn't watch it. Well, it went majorly to hell in a handbasket. So she came into her session and she was upset. She was upset even to the point where she felt, she was going to have to get out of the business. She had heard that the head of the organization that had hired them both, this guy that was in charge of all of this, was bad-mouthing her to other people. Her reputation, she thought, was ruined. So she came to me and she was so upset. And I said, well, you've lost the job. I've not only lost the job, I'm going to have to get out of this. My reputation is horrible. I said, well, maybe not. Let's see what we can do about this. I said, let's write him a note and send him a big gift basket, this man that's bad-mouthing you. She said, what? And I said, why do you ask me that? She said, because what do I get out of that? I mean, I just, and I said, clearly your ego child's mind is speaking here. So here's what I would do, and I suggest you do it. Send him a big and beautiful gift basket and write him this note in a real humbleness of spirit. And I dictated something like, of course, it was more elegant when I actually had time to think, because I don't have it in front of me, and I crafted it real well for her, with her. But it was something to the effect of, dear Steve, certainly I want to thank you for this great opportunity you gave me. I am ashamed. I feel terrible that it did not work out. And, she probably elaborated on that. I want you to know that this has been the greatest and most powerful lesson that I probably ever had in my life. I have learned what not to do. I am always, as I work with people, going to apply these huge lessons that you have taught me to every situation, and hopefully it will make me a better logistics person. I don't know what she called herself, and a better person. I cannot thank you enough for this, even though it hurts like hell. And I am in all gratitude. Now, I worked on her so that she could send that letter in her highest self. Because if you had written that, you could write that same letter in bullshit. Ooh, should I say that on the air? In bull. Really, you could have, right? But we got her there, and she sent it. As soon as that letter in that basket arrived, within 24 hours, that man called her, and she had the job, not the other people. She had. He didn't want her applying these great lessons to other people. He wanted them for his company. He's a smart man, right? So I don't even believe no is ever no, unless it's really no. I think that you've got to look at what mind you're working from. Are you working from your highest self mind? Something that really gets the gifts and gets the learning experience. Is anything ever a mistake as long as you learn from it? I don't think so. This is in you, ladies and gentlemen, these new talents and gifts and abilities, these new presentations and way to present yourself and ways of thinking about the world, but they only exist in the highest self. So you bet we need to work on you and get you beyond the ego child's mind in all aspects of your life. Assimilated certainly into the whole, but not the operating system as it is now when all the energy is in the emotional body. Okay, my next point in a series of points that weren't on the page is I think it's extremely important to wake up to our operating system. What's our operating system? What I mean is our motivations. Now, we've talked about attachment styles, right? There are four actually attachment styles. There's a secure attachment style, which I want all of you all to be ultimately when you assimilate this. There is the dismissive avoidant attachment style, which means I'd rather dismiss this and I'd rather avoid this, and I don't need people that much. I can do it on my own. Thank you very much. There is the fearful avoidant, which means you just go through life kind of being afraid of everything. You probably fantasize a lot because you're afraid, okay? And you'd rather not do certain things. Nice little controlled world you got there. What did we say about control? Okay, you understand where I'm coming from? And the last one is called, what is it? Fearful preoccupied. Fearful preoccupied. This is a true dependence on other people without you knowing who you are. All of these systems, except for the secure, are very avoidant. So I say, you've got to work on yourself. And if you have any of these, you're going, yeah, tomorrow I'll work on myself. Yeah, I'll get a book. I'll read that. Yeah, I'll good show, great show. But you never get around to working on yourself. And that's a mistake. Because you never open that door to more wisdom and learning, which is, by the way, not in me, it's in you. Okay? It's in you. I'm just the catalyst, like a good old enzyme. We have to wake you up. This is the opposite of avoidance. This is the awareness of self and what you're motivated by. This is the listening to everything you say and the thoughts you think. You think 1,000 of them an hour, possibly. Whoa, you're going to get busy. You got to wake up. Consciousness is about being conscious of what you're truly motivated by. Now, does that make you a bad person if you're motivated by something dark or selfish? No, it makes you human. Why isn't that all right? There's another side of you, too, you see, that I know about. And I know about it because this is true of all human beings, but we are so busy vilifying ourselves, we don't see how powerful we can be. There's another side of you. The other side of you is generous to a fault, and not even to a fault, just generous to yourself and others. Kind, good, loving, talented. Even if you say, I'm not creative. I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, I'm not creative. I'm just not creative. After a few years, literally, they think they're the most creative people on the planet. They can't stop creating, right? They misread themselves. They were doing other things with that energy, you see, like being OCD, worrying all the time, being frantic. Part of this is just wrangling the energy into where you want it to be and making sure it'll go there. Okay. So if we're avoiding all the time, you don't want to do this work. Oh, you'd like to hear about it. You see, if you hear about it and never act on it, it stays in the mental realm. That's a nice, safe place for it to be. You don't ever have to really put yourself on the line, be vulnerable in the emotional body. You don't have to do anything really with it and be out there invisible in the physical world. And you can really not even have to buy into the spiritual very much. You can entertain it mentally. It's a great trap. It's where everybody starts, by the way. So stop vilifying yourself for that just because I pointed out. It's where everybody starts. It's not where everybody ends up, and it's not where you should stay. There's a should, but this is a good one. But if you're avoiding, you don't want to mess with it. You would rather control. Have control. See, every one of those attachment styles, everyone except secure wants to control everything. Secure doesn't want to control everything. That's the open system. It wants to listen and choose, and it's very conscious. We're really busy beating ourselves up. And in the ego child's mind. We're beating ourselves up so much. That's really one of the reasons we avoid, because we don't fail at anything. My God, can you listen to your inner self-talk if you fail? Dear heavens. So we don't want to do anything. We want to keep control. We don't have to tell ourselves that we're a failure. I say, be anything you are. Take chances. Calculated ones now. But my God, you've got to grow. The whole thing is growth. Life is not about pain. It's not about avoiding pain. You're going to have pain. You know, we want to minimize it. We'll try. But for heaven's sakes, learn something. Grow. Get out there. Put your voice out. And we got to get you there to do it. Because right now your ego child's mind goes, woo!
90 seconds.
Why do I know that? Because mine did. Everybody's does. All right, we have 90 seconds, guys. So I want to stop for a moment. We'll pick up where we left off, hopefully with the list next week. I want to thank you so much for getting the word around about the show on social media. I appreciate it more than I can say, and about really all the things that we have to offer. We're about to offer a lot more. We're going to have some online.
60 seconds.
We're going to have some online classes and some other things. I also want to remind you, please, to not only get the word around, but we're collecting your photos. Anybody who listens to the show and watches the show, or your dogs or cats or birds, please send us your picture. You'll read about it on my website, okay? And we're going to collect a community page. And I hope, with all my heart, I hope you'll send something in. So download it or upload it or whatever you have to do with the computer and send it to us. There's an address there. I think it's, there's an address on the website. And a lot of changes are coming up for us, so stay tuned for them. But for heaven's sakes, guys, take me seriously. Get to work. I love you very much. I want you to have good lives. Have wonderful ones. I'm going to pray for you after the show. And please get the word around. Please send this out so that we get more viewers and listeners so we can spread the word and expand our community. God bless you all. Take care.